Yeah, and he didn't live up to it. So that might have been one of the worst promises that anybody has ever made in the history of the world. He got a lot of people killed. A lot of people were emboldened by Trump's words. Look, if the most powerful man in the world, in charge of the most powerful military in the history of the world, says, we're going to come to your defense if you do X, Y, and Z, and then they did X, Y, and Z on that promise, and lo and behold, he didn't come to their defense. A lot of people got killed. So for us, what does it mean? If he's an honest man and really wants to make up for it, he will make that war against Iran. He's just buying time or whatever it is he's doing. He's been delaying and delaying, but if he's already determined to do it, so it's just going to happen. And it's going to affect us, obviously. War is never good. And if he doesn't do anything, then he's going to be it just gives you another one of his, X marks on his list. So that's pretty bad. Growing up, I'll tell you, I learned something really wrong. Do you guys have Holocaust education? Yeah. What it consists of? Yeah. What it consists of?
My Holocaust education?
Yeah.
Basically, learning about the Holocaust, reading different biographies, going to the Holocaust Museum in the U.S.
Yeah. No, this mine. Go ahead. Drink water. Tap water is almost free. I feel sorry if that's a bottled water, by the way. It costs about 1,000 times as much as tap water per liter. Yeah, that's why it's someone else's tap water also. But that I still have bottled water in the house because of the threat of war.
This one is just
so
a little more
you had a good typical American Holocaust education. Now, one of the things that I grew up with was, perhaps man had a responsibility to his fellow man. Somehow, let's say, people in the United States should have done whatever they could to save the victims of the Holocaust. Now, I will grant that the United States, or at least people involved in the United States, like Roosevelt, it turns out maybe could have done certain things, but he just chose not to. And certainly the British Empire and the American Empire did their part to make it easier for Nazi Germany to kill Jews, specifically not allowing Jews asylum in the countries to which they wanted to escape. That was pretty bad. That was big a dime. That was an act that they actually did. They could have allowed Jews to escape, and they did not do so. So that was evil. But let's say the Americans know that there's a Holocaust happening in Poland. Do they have a responsibility to endanger themselves and make war against the perpetrators in order to rescue the victims? Do they have a moral responsibility?
For another nation?
Yeah.
For another nation?
Yeah, to another nation. Let's say the Indians hear that there is some sort of genocide happening in Australia, which is an ocean away. On the maps, there's a whole Indian Ocean between them. Yeah. Do the Indians have to get on their ships and get on their planes and send over as much of an army as possible to fight the Australians in order to save the Yahupitsins who are being genocided in Australia?
They don't have a moral...
Unless they have a deal with them.
Unless they have a bris, yeah.
They don't have a moral obligation.
Yeah.
However, in the modern era with the connection of the world,
yeah.
the way that the world forms different groups in order to take responsibility for each other and to come to each other's aid, maybe those whom they have a closer partnership to, they have more of a responsibility because of their interests.
You're talking about, what he just said. They have a bris. They have some sort of covenant.
Yeah.
They have a deal. They have a treaty, non-aggression pact, or like mutual aid. But the answer is, you said that nowadays, those things actually are quite ancient. They're mentioned in the Bible. That was basically what the Gibeonites did with Joshua. So when the other Canaanites said, "Oh, you people are traitors, we're going to wipe you out," so they appealed to the Israelites for help. So it became the Israelites' responsibility to their Ba'alei Brith, that means those with whom they have this deal, to rescue them. So there is. So I'm talking about no connection. You just hear about the United States had no bris, no covenant, no pact with the Jews of Central and Eastern Europe. So was the United States in any way supposed to try to fight to save the Jews during the Holocaust?
It might not have been exactly a U.S. problem and issue.
Yeah, sorry.
For the Jews and government and the influence and power, for them there's a responsibility
to try to do something.
And to influence the government and powers to do something.
But doesn't one nation have some sort of Torah obligation, that means in the eyes of God, to rescue another nation? innocents from some other thing, to make war and risk their own lives.
Theoretically, if it's towards the Jews, you could take the case of, was it Adon?
Yeah.
Where they said they went over and asked them for help. They said no, they're punishment.
Well, what are you talking about? Save us from the Egyptians, or just let us through your land? Yeah, that was kind of bad. Maybe the Edomites should have been more of a fraternal love. The Torah would have expected from Ammonites and Moabites. The Torah says explicitly, at least when we came by, they should have offered us food and drink. But instead, no, that they should have been hospitable. If we showed up, they should have been hospitable. But instead, what did they do? They were aggressive toward us.
But I think
but that's not the case we're talking about now. Yeah.
I think the only way to really see this in a true lens that the Torah presents to us,
yes,
is with Yaakov Avinu. What happened with him when his sons attacked Shechem? He said, "Now the people of the land is going to come up against us because there was a fraternity between them.
Yeah,
it wasn't with him." So I don't think that there's any Torah obligation for any one particular nation to hold responsibility for any other group of people.
Yes,
but for themselves they do.
Okay, so I agree with that, with what you're saying. I realized, and this is something that I understand from Holocaust education. Holocaust education, at least where I came from, sort of laid a little bit of blame on the nations of the world for not helping the Jews. And I'm thinking, I don't know about that. We, let's say as a Jewish country, our country, does not go and stop all sorts of genocides around the world. And by the way, they happen all the time. They're currently happening. They're happening right now. So if Am Yisrael himself does it, I don't think that the sages would have wanted us to have to get our armies and somehow go and endanger those armies in order to save one nation from another. But for some reason in Holocaust education, there was this whole thing that laid the blame at the foot of, let's say, those who could have potentially stopped Nazi Germany and that enterprise. And now I'm beginning to realize that, well, I'm beginning now. I mean, it didn't sit right then, and now I could actually explain why. Just thinking about it, talking it out, doesn't make sense. V'adarabba, Holocaust education ignored something that was quite fundamental to, let's say, those who should be studying the Torah. And that is there, let's say, a Torah precedent for understanding why these things happen?
Why what things happen? Exactly?
Why to Am Yisrael? Why would Am Yisrael be punished so badly, harmed?
I don't understand the question. I think most people know that they just don't want to live to that reality.
Well, most of us, I think that most of us know the answer. The answer is quite clear. It's a Torah. If you don't keep the Torah, you're punished. Am Yisrael got holocausted before. Not the first time. They talk about the Shmad, Hadrianic persecutions. Rabbi Akiva and his friends were discussing to what extent was the genocide in Egypt prosecuted. They talk about building gigantic furnaces in Egypt to dispose of all the corpses of the Jews who were killed by the Egyptians. Do you know that Medrash mentions that explicitly? It says, Mikur ha-barzel b'Mitzrayim. And there are Tanaim. Rabbi Akiva and his friends discuss this. Kur ha-barzel is not a mushal. In Isaiah, when he mentions Kur ha-barzel, it is a mushal for what happens with the crucible, the iron crucible. What do you do with it? The silversmith purifies the silver. He burns out the dross, the other lesser minerals that might be with the silver, in order to get the pure silver. So there it's a mushal. But when Kur ha-barzel is mentioned in Deuteronomy, there were Tanaim who took Moses at his word. They were talking about a gigantic cremation device.
But, I'm sorry. How can that be concerning a cremation device when it says, "I took you out of the iron crucible of Egypt"?
Yeah.
That pasuk in Devarim, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is Perek 4.
Yeah. Very good.
The people who seem to be alive over there, they don't seem to be.
There were survivors. There were those who didn't die and didn't get burned.
So you're saying they were saved?
Yeah. Look, there was a fellow who I talked about this also. We might have an earlier video about this. I remember I used to read a lot of Holocaust autobiographies. One well-known survivor termed his book "The Iron Crucible" specifically because of this. So Holocausts are actually nothing new for Am Yisrael, unfortunately. Amalek is around, and Amalek will always do what Amalek does. And the Holocaust education that we received in Jewish institutions was almost from a secular Zionist point of view. It didn't incorporate, let's say, what we hope would be a midrashic, a Talmudic point of view, which is we have to look inward. We can't point to them and say, our ancestors, they all became seculars, and that's why God brought about a Holocaust on them. But we do have to realize that when these things are happening, it's when it's God trying to wake us up, and we're suffering the consequences of our own actions, or our, I guess, even neglectful actions. How do I know this? Well, I looked at last week's Parsha. Vayavo Amalek. Amalek came right before the pasuk says, Smichos of Parshios, what does it say? They asked and refuted him, Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu imayim. Is God with us?
Or not.
Yeah, or not? And at the end of this battle with Amalek, you have something interesting. Normally, it's battles in the Torah talk about who wins. Okay? They went and they fought, and so and so smote them. But here it gives actually details. It wasn't actually a clear victory. It doesn't say and the Israelites smote the Amalekites, or the Amalekites smote them and the Israelites had to flee, like we said, for example.
But it does
next
say
time.
Yehoshua put them to flee.
Well,
it does say that Yehoshua ben Nun put them to flee.
He didn't put them to flee. I'll give you, let's say, what I would have expected. It says in Parshas Shlach, what happens to the Jews who had decided, you know what, now we're going to go into the land. Now we failed. We're going to try to make up for it. Wayapilo Rosh Hahar, Wa'aloth El Rosh Hahar, and Moses and the Ark of the Covenant didn't go with them. Vayerd Hamaleki v'Kanani Oshev Baharahu, the Amalekites and the Canaanites that lived in that hill area came down. Wayakum Vayakatu Ad Chorma, and they smote them, crushed them until the Chorma. Right, that's a normal description of a war in, let's say, the Torah or the rest of the Tanakh. I would have expected so, and Yoshua went and beat back the Amalekites, and they fled. What does it say instead? Moshe Rabbeinu said, Yoshua, pick men and go fight. And he went and fight, and Moshe Rabbeinu had to go up the hill. Interesting enough, most other wars, when it says Moshe Rabbeinu sent Pinchas and 12,000 men to fight the Midianites, it doesn't say, and Moshe Rabbeinu took, Elazar ben Aaron and whoever was Hur's counterpart 40 years later, and they went up the mountain and they prayed and he held up his hands, and when he had strength to keep his hands up, the Israelites prevailed, and when he was getting weak, the Amalekites were prevailing. You see, it was sort of a seesaw. This war was going. It was an all-day thing, and it took a long time, and it doesn't even have a clear victory. Vayachalosh Yoshua. Vayachalosh Yoshua should be a hechalish, right? Vayachalash. I don't know what should be. Vayachlish should be vayachlesh. Normally, it's if you have a hifil with it, so you put the accent mil-el, and the chirik becomes a segol, like vayosef instead of Yosef, so it should be machalish. And it says vayachalosh, it's a pa'al. If you say a person vayachalosh, which is a pa'al, so it means a subject. It's not a transitive verb, which means that person. If I say chalashti, what does that mean? I got weak. Okay, ata chalashta means you got weak. Vayachalosh means hu chalash. So Yeshua was weak.
He was weakened them.
He weakened them, so it should be a hifil. And I'd expect not a chulam between the lamed and the shin. So you say Joshua weakened them. Yeah, that's most people understand this is what the pasuk's trying to say, but that's not what the verb means. He shattered them.
Quite clear.
Yeah, the Onkelos is clear. I'm just trying to point out that the Hebrew is ambiguous. Right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't have expected a chulam there.
So that ambiguity is teaching what exactly?
Same thing like Moshe Rabbeinu. It was going one way or going the other way, and he didn't beat them, obviously. And God actually tells Moshe Rabbeinu, this battle is going to continue forever. Write it down in the Torah, put it in the book. This is the eternal battle, God's eternal battle.
Well, can I push back on what you just said?
Yeah, push back, please.
Those people never told him, write it down and put it in the Torah. He said, write it down and give it to Yehoshua.
In the book.
Right, but that doesn't seem to have anything to do with the Torah itself.
Okay, so
it got written in the Torah.
No, something else got written in the Torah altogether. The war between, remember what Amalek did to you, got written in the Torah. But exactly what Hashem is referring to give to Yehoshua ben Nun and why to Yehoshua ben Nun is something totally different.
Zot Zikaron Ba-Sefer. Not Bis-Sefer, Ba-Sefer.
In the Sefer.
Yeah, so what's that book? Which book are you referring to?
No.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's very ambiguous.
Well, I don't think it's ambiguous. I think it's vague.
Yes, because the Torah is normally specific. Normally the Torah wants to say something, but the Sefer Torah or the Sefer...
Well, it didn't exist yet, so he's like... The Chazal explain it. Moshe Rabbeinu was writing down a lot of things. At the end, he put it all together into one book.
But if this is a mitzvah specifically for Yehoshua,
yeah, no, it's a mitzvah for Moshe Rabbeinu to write it and then give him the book.
Right, but to Yehoshua, we have a different mitzvah for us to remember Amalek. That should be independent of Yehoshua.
No, I think Joshua is the one who's transmitting the entire Torah to Am Yisrael. Mm-hmm. It was continued also in Devarim. It was Moshe, Yehoshua, and then to everybody else.
Does it say Oznei Yehoshua?
The Simbo is Nei Yehoshua.
Or they put the book into someone's ears?
Yeah. So that's obviously a figurative expression that cannot be interpreted literally. It's trying to interpret, trying to, let's say, translate figurative expressions to other languages is on the face.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, you don't know enough Hebrew yet to get the joke? Okay. In Hebrew, there's a figurative expression meaning saying al hapanim. Al hapanim is totally messed up, man. But that literally means on the face. If you translate that into English, it has no idiomatic meaning. So too, I said, if you translate figurative expressions literally, it'll be on the face. Okay? Doesn't work. Okay. Well, yeah, okay. Yeah, maybe that's what it means. My point is, when we study the Holocaust, we're supposed to look at it through this lens. What are Am Yisrael supposed to do? So too, if we see the rise of anti-Semitism now, thank God, people are waking up to it. If you see rise of anti-Semitism, it doesn't mean we need more hasbara. We need more people combating it. You saw something just happened this week. They were saying in the news a little bit. Kaki did not hear it. It points out that Jews were doing potentially naughty things. Certain names of well-known Jews, and people see this. You listen to people who want to be anti-Semites, or people can easily just become, oh, now I'm an anti-Semite. Now I hate Jews. 3 prominent Jewish people, real Chil Hashem, by the way. That's why Chil Hashem is such an important concept. Behave. Otherwise, you'll make the rest of us look really bad. Okay? Who is involved? We don't have to say the names of these people. Right? 3 simple names. Epstein, Ehud Barak, and Dershowitz. Okay? Their names are up to naughty things this week. They're and they got people saying, see, it's a whole big Jewish conspiracy. They're up to anything. Aside from the fact that in the same breath, you also have 2 Clintons. By the way, President of the United States and Secretary of State, and the most powerful Americans, the King of England's brother, and Bill Gates. No, they're forget that even though they're all WASPs, which I have nothing against, by the way. Now, no one says that as a WASP conspiracy. It's just 3 prominent Jews. So if you're the type of fool who falls into this, and by the way, there are many more other people who are obviously not Jewish involved in this, whatever that's going wrong. The vast majority of them are not Jewish. But it doesn't matter. You find 3 Jewish names, and that makes us all look bad, and that tells people, you know what? The Jews are the enemy. Right? That's what happens. So that's terrible. If you see a thing like this happening, it doesn't mean there's anything that you or I can do on, let's say, the political plane to help this. Instead, what is this a sign of? Yeah, it's a sign that God is allowing a Amalek to become stronger because we are not doing the right thing. And that's how we should always react. And if we see that, let's say, things are getting worse, the Pax Americana is coming to an end, just like it did in Spain and in Germany. And it will not bode well for the Jews. And you have Jews who are ignoring this fact. Someone was saying, hey, did you know that in certain places in America, and certainly in England, even more so in England, the Jews need armed security everywhere they go? I remember when things changed, it was a little bit worse in New York. You couldn't go into the synagogue. The synagogue and the yeshivas are locked. There's a lock on every door. And there's armed policemen outside. Well, at least the police are still, ostensibly there to protect the Am Yisrael. What's going to be when they tell the police stop doing that? So the Jews have to be armed and ready. Yeah, well, it should make aliyah, because here it's totally fine. Here they're not insulting your intelligence by taking a prominent rabbi's son, and also the brother of a well-known new political figure, and saying that they're going to charge him with aiding and abetting the enemy for doing what? Allegedly smuggling cigarettes into Gaza during the war. He allowed trucks full of stuff to get into the hands of Hamas, which was monetary support. Now, people like us have been talking about this. I didn't do enough to stop those trucks, but there were neighbors who went and did whatever they could to stop the trucks that the government's letting in to Gaza the entire time, right? The so-called humanitarian aid. Where does that end up? Everybody knows where it ends up. Of course you see it. But now they're accusing a private individual of doing the same thing the government did, and they're going to try him for treason, for a crime that ostensibly carries a death penalty.
In Israel? Or
Yeah, in Israel.
Yeah.
They're accusing a private citizen of doing something like that, which the government was doing openly, and that citizens tried to stop the government from doing. But now they're accusing a private citizen of doing that and saying that he was a criminal. That's messed up. You saw this? Oh, you don't get to see the news. You don't get to see this. It's terrible. They said it was running out of Be'er Sheva. Okay, smuggling in cigarettes to Gaza for a few months during the summer was aiding and abetting the enemy because it offered material support to the Hamas.
He gave cigarettes to...
No, he smuggled them in for money. It was a mobster type of thing. That's what the accusation is.
So
they said,
tax is the problem.
Well,
the missing taxes and customs. Is the
yeah,
problem, right?
whatever. I don't know what it is, but they said aiding and abetting the enemy. That was part of his crime. Because the stuff on the trucks made its way to Hamas. But the government wasn't doing that. The citizens have been trying to stop the government from doing that all this time. What's going on here? Obviously, God's trying to tell people to wake up. We're not keeping the Torah. And if we continue during this way, what did it say? What's the best way not to keep the Torah? It's actually 3 times. It's in Shemos, it's in Vayikra, it's in Bamidbar, and it's in Devarim. What? 4 times. No, sorry, 4 times. I thought about the 3 times, and I realized it's in Bamidbar also. What am I talking about? Now, when individuals do averos and do mitzvahs, many of us do want to do mitzvahs. We have the right intention. Sometimes we forget to do the mitzvahs positively, and we have yetzer haros. So sometimes we do averos, right? The worst thing is when you just don't care. Okay, is God even here? What does it matter? So like I said, the guy with the opposite of the Pascal's wager. What was Pascal's wager?
Some type of optimization.
Yeah, it's like
there is a God, and they're just
So it's safer to. But he was talking about a Christian God, obviously. He's basically saying there may or may not be the general Christian God out there. So just try to stay on his good side, and just in case he's out there, because if you live like let's say some sort of real atheist heathen in France in the 1700s, then you might suffer the consequences in the next world, or when you die. So that's Pascal's wager. I'm sure it's not. I'm not saying as sophisticated as I should be saying it. Pascal was quite smart. He knew math, so among other things. But he wasn't Torah B'goyim Al Talmud. But then the opposite of Pascal's wager, I think, is more cynical. It's like, well, don't worry about the fact that you sinned or you didn't do this mitzvah. Maybe there is no God. And after the fact, can you imagine there are people who have that type of attitude?
Yes, it's in it.
Yes, it's in a few times in Tanakh. There are people who have this attitude. Maybe David Melch was using it to describe the way certain people behaved when they left Egypt, and even before that. Okay, there are people, and afterwards he says the way they continued their avos doing before they left Egypt, they continued doing even until the times of David Melch. Things never change. This attitude, Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu imayim, is God even here? Does he really care? By the way, the Rambam says, like I said, this is sort of the Aristotelian view of Hashgacha Pratis, right? That Eov exemplified. I know God created the world. Of course, there's a creator, etc. One highest power. I'm a monotheist. However, what does it matter? Does he really care what's going on day to day? Right?
So why would he bring korbanot every day?
Who? Eov. No. Once the tragedy happened, okay. Eov, when things were good, would do this, but then when Eov suffered, Eov started saying things that maybe he shouldn't have said. You understand? That's what I'm talking about. That's when we get into Eov's monologues. When we get to Eov's speeches, his soliloquies in the middle of the dialogue, he's, according to Rambam at least. The other Rishonim don't understand this way. I just like to return to that all the time. Okay, go and read. I'll show it to you. It's more Nevuchim. It's in the third. It's in the third chapter. It's in the third section, right in the middle.
It's about 54, 58.
Really? Wow, you're memorizing these things really well. I thought it was in the 40s. Okay, fine. I don't remember the number. Either way, the point is, Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu imayim. That's your attitude toward worship of God. In Sefer Vayikra, the Tochla, it's calling walking with God b'keri. Okay, walking with God b'keri is right there. It's in Vayikra. In Bamidbar, that's the attitude that Dor HaMidbar types had, that when they were basically given the option to go into Eretz Yisrael. We believe in God and all that, but is he really with us? Like, we know we've been taught all this, but now push comes to shove. We're out in the real world. Moshe Rabbeinu's promises of God's help and all that. Tachlis, we're outnumbered, we're outgunned, we can't do it. that's the naturalistic way of looking at things. You're not relying on God. Now you're saying, I'm walking with God. It was like Bar Kochba was playing. Just don't get in my way, right? I could win if you don't get in my way. You don't have to help me. You don't have to hurt me. So too, that attitude suddenly was when it came time for an actual war, they started thinking God aside. We're not thinking about this in terms of, is God helping us? Or are we doing this with God? It's more like, on paper, here's what we have. And again, in Devarim, that's also in the Tochacha, right? You didn't want to serve God out of happiness, right? You just, when you don't serve God out of happiness, God is more like something you do formally or you do out of fear, but instead of just walking with him the way you're supposed to. By the way, that's what a tzaddik does since the beginning. He's mithalech with God, right? If you're not walking with God hand in hand, so you take this attitude. So God says, fine, you don't want to serve me in how you actually live your life, so you'll be up. I'll let you go. I will not be with you, and then you'll see what happens. Then the Romans will beat you, because really, if you consider yourselves just like any other nation, the Romans will crush you just like any other nation. But if you're not just like any other nation, even the Romans can't stop you. Okay? A superpower cannot stop you. So that's the attitude we have to have. And that's why we should be studying the Parsha. And that's why we have to look at this and say that when we were, at least the way I was taught about the Holocaust, I don't think was from a Jewish perspective in any way. And I remember reading, Rabbi Victor Miller attempted to do this. And I remember his way of looking at things actually upset a lot of people, turns out. I'll tell you a little bit of a story. Have you read any of his books? Yeah. Rabbi Victor Miller, the Mashgiach in Brooklyn. So I read his books. And I didn't know his voice. I knew what he looked like. I see a picture of him. But I read his books. His books are written formally. They're edited. They do not sound like the way he sounded like in real life. He recorded a lot of shiurim. In real life, it was a lot more raw. And maybe even offensive to some people. It was a lot more hard-hitting. Perhaps even insulting to some people. And then I remember the first time I heard him, like, wow, I can't believe he said this. A lot of people defended what he said. A lot of people told me, like, I couldn't stand because he sounded like a little bit even perhaps disrespectful of others. I can understand sometimes you have to speak that way. So his idea that basically saying, he wrote this, Am Yisrael in Eastern Europe turned their backs on Hashem, so Hashem turned his back on them. He gave an example, just a illustrative. Yeah, he said.
So in Lithuania,
yeah, he says.
Less than 1% survived, and Lithuania was still very.
So you know what he said? He remembers when he first got to Vilna. He was in Lithuania before on the eve of the Holocaust. He says when he first got there in the 30s, there was a bus on every half hour from the Jewish district to the business district on Shabbos. There were Jews who were being Chal Shabbos and commuting. There was a bus left every half hour. By the time Rabbi Victor Miller was leaving and going back to America before the war started, there was a bus every 5 minutes. Okay? They said, to play on the pasuk, Ki ein bias asher ein sham meis. That was referring to what? Death of the firstborn. Every house had a dead person. They said, no, the way it is in Am Yisrael now, the secularization or the abandonment of Torah in Eastern Europe was so great that Ki ein bias asher ein sham chai. If you had one guy left in the house who's still keeping the Torah, that was the exception. Everybody in the house is already dead. They abandoned the Torah. That's the way he said it. I wasn't there, and I'm not going to accuse anybody of doing so. But it is true that a lot of Jews gave up on Torah, especially in Germany and other places beforehand.
So that's the point. In Germany, about 60% or so could save themselves somehow.
Yeah.
They were all, at best, reform.
Yeah.
Usually completely secular.
Yeah.
Whereas in Lithuania, not even 1%. In Poland, which was very traditional still, under 10%, I think even under 5% got saved. So the argument is a bit hard to swallow unless you say, no, we don't care about these details. It's all just one Yahadut.
Okay. Yeah, that's what it should be. So the outbreak of this most recent war taught me something that I should have realized a long time ago, and that was who has a responsibility to save Am Yisrael? If Am Yisrael is being attacked, Am Yisrael's, ourselves. Am Yisrael have to stand up. The Shulchan Aruch assumes every individual Jew has to take up arms even on Shabbos and go fight to defend other Jews. Yeah, it's in the Gemara, and it's also in the Shulchan Aruch. And the easiest way to do that such thing, or the best way to do it, is if Am Yisrael has a proper army that is there to defend Am Yisrael. Now, I'm very proud of the people who serve. They're doing a good job. Yeah. But we also need regular Jews to know that sometimes they give orders. You know, there was a guy sitting here He left the yeshuv, and some other people, soldiers. They have the training. They're not just regular people. Actually, somewhere up there on in the hierarchy, they were not running out armed on Shmini Atzeres. I saw one guy who's a big shot getting his car at 4:00 in the afternoon. He even had a few seconds to answer my question, like, what's going on? Maybe I should have been doing what's going on. Maybe I should have given some of the keys to my car. I was not armed. I have no training, but I should have helped people give them rides. If someone had asked me, if they had turned on the sirens to wake everybody up like they do when there's a rocket coming in, they should have said, every Jew, get up, we have to fight. But even Jews who were ready, they were just saying, await orders. There are people who ordered people to stand down. They didn't know what they didn't allow people to fight. There are too many Jews who were officially in the system who were obeying orders too much. Yeah.
The biggest problem on that day was an absolute disorderly command structure.
Yeah.
If you just brought the entire army to the Gaza envelope, without doing it in any organized way, there would have just been a lot of friendly fire.
Yeah, not to bring the alarm up, but at least tell people, get up, there's a war. Why is this guy going out at 4:00 in the afternoon? He should be getting up at 8.
But they didn't get the orders until later.
Yeah, the orders were very slow going out, but we were saved that day. It turns out by people just went in and fought, and that's really what was necessary. You have to defend yourself. There's a lot of Jews who are realizing now. I'll finish with this before we go to the Navi. You know what's so funny? I looked at Olam Katan. Normally I don't. There's 2 newspapers here: Besheva, the settler newspaper, and Olam Katan, which is less settler-like, but still, you know what I'm talking about? The Hebrew media, the Shabbos newspapers. You know what I'm talking about?
You know what you're talking about? I don't read them.
I don't read them either. Why should I read an Israeli newspaper? I'm American. Until they get me the New York Post here in Israel, I'm going to be reading no newspaper. Okay? You should, by the way, you should disconnect. Don't listen to any of the mainstream news sites. Only believe what you get from your own eyes or people you trust, your neighbors. And nowadays you can actually do that thanks to the internet and Twitter and the WhatsApp. Yeah, you can. Your neighbors actually put out, like, we have a video from a guy in real time. Help, I'm a shepherd here. I'm being attacked by Arabs and leftists. You know he's telling you the truth. You know this guy. He walks into the base matters sometimes, and he is here. And he's showing you with his own phone. So you know that happened. Most other things you don't know what happened unless they can show you video of it. Like we discussed last week. People playing suicide by cop. You could see it because it's filmed on many angles. So you see what's happening. You don't have to listen to his report. Just see what happened yourself. You can see it. If you didn't see it yourself, don't listen to anybody telling you what happened.
Seeing video is very hard to evaluate for a normal person.
I know, normal person, but see it a lot. And if you don't understand what's going on, say, I'm not going to let someone tell me what happened here. That's it. Don't allow yourself to be manipulated. So what was happening? In the Jewy newspapers that they give out before Shabbos, why do I collect them? Because my daughters read them, and sometimes there's also something funny in there. I think Besheva is better than Olam Katan, but whatever. I actually looked at it because I wanted to see something. I wanted them to run a certain article. They didn't go with it because it didn't fit what they were doing then, so they ignored it. What happened was they were reporting on something that we also heard firsthand from witnesses who we know. What's going on? I heard this from a few people I know, and the guy who wrote the article for Olam Katan is someone with whom I'm in contact, and I met him a few times. He's around. He's a local activist. So he was talking about how areas here, farther out from Jerusalem, especially toward the Jordan Valley, are becoming more peaceful. There used to be certain no-go zones. Now, you know that it's unfortunate in Eretz Yisrael. We talked about this last year. There are places where if Jews go there, they'll get killed. There are no-go zones for Jews in Eretz Yisrael. Isn't that terrible?
You just walk into Michmus.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah. And Ramallah is there, right? You know about these no-go zones. But there are also places not in cities, like between their villages and certain roads, certain places where, that it's not safe. And you know why. And by the way, it's not because there are Jews living there. It's because there are non-Jews living there. It's like Jackie Mason's joke. You go into a bad neighborhood somewhere. It's like no one's going to say that going to the Jewish neighborhood is ever dangerous anywhere. Correct? There's a reason. It's a cultural thing. Now what happens? There are places here in Eretz Yisrael that are getting better. It's becoming safe for Jews to go there now. Relatively, statistically speaking. Not only that, it's getting greener. Isn't that strange? Places where towards the Jordan Valley are basically it's an extension of the Judean desert, but it shouldn't go that far north. Around the Dead Sea, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But it's these places, some people put pictures. It rains every winter. things turn green, like the hills around here. They turn green in the winter, and then in May they start to get brown, such that by the time we're beginning to start the rainy season, they're fully brown. And then they green again with the coming of the rains. But there's some places they pointed out have never been green. Now they're greener. Simple explanation for this, metaphysically, is, well, Am Yisrael's returned to there, so it's becoming better, right? But also, technical thing, the Bedouins who were there with their flocks, they don't know how to graze right. They're the ones who caused the deserts to happen. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So they overgraze, and Chazal said, Behemadaka destroy basically areas. You have to take Behemadaka outside of the civilized areas, the settled areas. Right? No, Behemadaka. Behemadaka means sheep and goats.
So not cattle.
Well, not cattle, but cattle, no. That's Behemagasa.
No, but I thought there was also a takana on cattle, like you can't have cattle within Eretz Israel because of this whole issue.
No. That was talking about Behemadaka, not Behemagasa. Cows are a different issue, but they're raised differently. The point is, so the Jews are taking these places back. And in the Olam Katan, they had a full splash 2-page thing, pictures, how great it is that thanks to the Jews who are actually not allowing themselves to be bullied, and they're showing force and they're fighting back. The army didn't do this for them. This is intrepid Jews who have guts. So they're reclaiming the land, and things are getting better. It's more peaceful. Yay. And what's going on? This is what's being reported in the, let's say, the media that is run for and by ostensibly religious Jews. And everybody's celebrating. The guy came into the base Spanish, and others are reporting about this. If you want various reports, I can show them to you. So things are getting better in certain places. And we know the people who are responsible for this. What's going on in the rest of the world? Because Am Yisrael is succeeding in these places, what's the reaction?
The settlers are taking over.
Oh, yeah. They're talking about settler violence, colonialism, the things are lawless, etc. You could find this in even Jewish media. And I found this even from people in Chutz La'aretz who are supposed to be, I guess, for lack of a better term, which is a terrible term, religious Zionist, Orthodox, supporters of Israel, but they're saying, situation West Bank, things are out of hand. I read it in the Jerusalem Post. I read it in I don't know what else he's reading. New York Times, do people even read New York Times anymore? But there was other media that are reporting the same exact thing as Oy Gewalt. And that's funny because in Gaza envelope, those Jews, they got eaten alive by their Ishmaelite neighbors.
It's a different group.
Yeah, a different group. But here the Jews, same enemy, same Jews, but these Jews have funny hair on the sides of their ears, and they wear grungier clothes because they're poor, and they live in shacks. So those Jews are up to no good. They're being violent. They're the aggressors against these, I guess, a group of people who are peaceful, innocent, never threatened Am Yisrael in any way, right? That's what's going on. So you see, Amalek, or at least God is empowering Amalek against the Jewish people because they're not keeping the Torah properly, but also because these Jews are succeeding. These minority of Jews are succeeding in settling Eretz Yisrael, making things better. So there has to be a reaction. The Satan gets power to accuse them, and Jews and other people actually believe these accusations, which are about 180 degrees backwards, right? Complete opposite of what actually the truth is. I don't know how to tell people about this. I mean, I know people. I'm going to record this and send this to them. Look into this. What they were told was a sign of lawlessness and Jews behaving badly is actually a sign of Jews winning and their enemies fleeing before them. And not only that, Eretz Yisrael, I guess, blooming in the wake of what's happening. That's a good thing. That's a sign that it's good, by the way. If Eretz Yisrael's healing because of this, that's the right thing. What are you going to do? Okay. What's this week's Parsha, according to the annual cycle? Yithro. So I was looking through Sefer Yeshayahu, and I realized, hey, it's actually the section we did today was going to be the Haftarah that most people are going to read this week. What's happening? What?
What's the alternative to Haftarah?
Well, the alternative, I didn't say alternative.
No, you said most people. So
yeah, no, the 3-year cycle.
Okay.
The 3-year cycle is a totally different place. But we talk about the annual cycle because the people who are watching the YouTube videos are around the world, and they do the 1 year cycle. The 1 year cycle actually is a very unifying effect because everybody's doing it. Even when they're doing 1 year cycle, it seems that it wasn't universal. It's like some places they're up to this week's parsha, something, it was just as long as you finish sometime around the new year, you're good. You're good. And you have to read the Tochel at a certain time, and you have to read Zachor on Parsha Zachor, obviously. But there was no rules about, Parshas Vayikra and then Shmini, and it has to be what do you call it? Parshas Tzav, right? There was no rule that Tzav has to be Shabbos Hagadol, for example. That's a much later rule, but it's a good rule of thumb, right? In a regular year, Tzav is always Shabbos Hagadol. In a leap year, then it gets more messed up. There's a few options.
Well, there can still be differences between Israel and Chutz.
Yeah, but that's after Pesach. That's always after Pesach or Shavuos. Okay? There's a rule that's been in place for a few hundred years. Tzav is Shabbos Hagadol. So you're saying, so when do I say, what? Yeah. Shana Pshuta. The 12 out of 19 years. Right? It's always like that. Okay. So I told you guys, there's we mentioned it last week. So what happens this week's Parsha? This week's Haftarah. Isaiah's call to prophecy.
It's his version of Masim Ben Kava.
Yeah, it's sort of like Merkava. It says the year that King Uzziyahu died, Yonasan says right then and there, no, the year that King Uzziyahu was afflicted with Saras because he entered the Heichal to offer Torah. So he got a little bit arrogant about that. So this is his call to prophecy. The sages said that he was Uzziyahu's cousin, much younger cousin, because he's the firstborn, and Yeshayahu was, we don't know if he was a firstborn or not, a son of a different son. So obviously, somewhere younger. And the Navi saw what's basically the lesson of what he sees. What does he see exactly?
Malakim.
Well, he sees Malachim, yeah, but what's the big picture? The forest. You're giving me a tree. He saw God's presence, yes. He sees that the pillars are shaking. The pillars of the temple are shaking, and there's smoke rising, and God's divine presence is picking up on his chariot with his angels and getting out of there. It's like you see the building collapsing, and the presence is, so to speak, fleeing. Wait, what's that a sign of?
God's coming to destruction.
So, well, how much after this did it actually happen?
About 300 more years after, no?
No, about half of that, but still, it's quite a while. It basically is trying to stave it off. And that's the way what happened. Yeshayahu's first prophecies are basically talking about how there's real disaster coming, the rise of the Assyrian Empire, the Neo-Assyrian Empire, and it's going to threaten Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. And actually, they were half successful. But
would you say that the same issue that concerned the time of Yeshayahu is the same issue that concerns our time as well?
Yeshayahu? I'm about to say that, yes. That's what I'm talking about.
No. What I mean is like this. His whole critique wasn't to the average people at first. His critique was to the Kohanim, to the Levi'im,
the big shots,
people who were right in big power.
Yes.
And what I'm saying is that seems to follow our trend today, which is the big shots who are influencing Yahadut, and those are the ones who really need to be reading this Sefer to understand that they're taking people away.
Well, you might as well. You want to sit in this chair for me now?
No, go ahead.
Fine. I wonder if that's being picked up by the audio. I hope it is. Yes. So let's get to that. Yeshayahu sees. By the way, this isn't the first chapter. Let me point out. Remember, my friend told this to me when I was younger. No, we're like the sixth. Sixth chapter. So, what does he see? He sees that this is happening, and he's told, now you're going on your mission. Yeshayahu basically saw the rise of the Assyrians, and they will come and destroy large parts of Israel, even take away a lot of the tribes. But there's going to be a messianic figure. Who's going to come in there? King Chizkiyahu. He's going to foresee his birth. He's basically the Messiah of his time, and if it goes well, he will save Am Yisrael, or he'll be God's agent. He'll be the leader when this sort of redemption happens. The destruction that Isaiah foresaw did not happen. It was averted, thanks to this messianic redemption. However, then they backslid again, over the next half century, and then that led to destruction. What are you going to say?
There's a Gemara in Brachot, where they argue about who's the Mashiach.
Yeah.
And one Shita says that all the Zechut Avot has been used up by Chizkiyahu already.
Yeah. Or that there was even a Tanaican idea that the prophesied messianic king already was Chizkiyahu. But there will be a Geula. It doesn't mean there won't be a redemption in the future. Now, the Rambam doesn't hold to that. He says it's almost a heresy to say it. Then you have to read Dr. Shapiro's book and say, so what does it mean? To what extent can you disagree with the Rambam in his 13 Ikarim? Is that halacha? And then he gives about 200 examples of Geonim and Rishonim and even Achronim who didn't exactly hold like the Rambam's 13 Ikarim. Sorry, Geonim, Rishonim, I forgot, Tanoim also. It's quite, he came with the second edition. But besides that, the point is, the Navi sees what's happening.
The interesting part about the Gemara is that this is actually the Batrai who says it's Chizkiyahu.
Yeah.
The youngest.
The later authority. So we're supposed to hold like that, but it's not a matter of halacha; it's a matter of hashkafa. So we don't paskin. Someone asked me. Rabbi Baruchim was talking about this. Machlokas, Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Eliezer regarding Am Yisrael having to repent at the end of days in order for the redemption to happen. He says, "What's the halacha?" I said, "I don't think there's a halacha in here. Perhaps there's the opinion that was the majority opinion, but still, it's not a matter of psak halacha. You don't paskin matters of ideology, right? I mean, we don't say heresies. We don't say outright heresies. But if it's not a matter of practical halacha, you don't say, well, there's a psak. There was a Hasidic idea that there are no demons anymore. Why? Because the Rambam paskin there's no demons, so he paskin them away. We used to believe in demons or evil spirits, so the Rambam paskin that now they're gone, right? You never heard that idea?
I've heard that, yeah. I don't think the Rambam would like that idea.
Okay, yes, it's not obviously that's not a Rambam idea. Okay, so the Navi then talks about a story here. It happened in the days of Achaz. Now, in previous sessions, we mentioned that basically the current ruler of Eretz Yisrael, the leader, for better or for worse, is very much like Achaz was, the wicked king. And Assyria of his time was basically the U.S. And he was there trying to, find favor with the Assyrians or the Americans, as it may be. We've discussed that before. Here, the Navi is bringing in an incident that happened that sheds light on this. Before the Assyrians actually did what they had to do, there was a new king in the land of Israel, in the northern kingdom, Pekah ben Remalyahu. He has the dubious distinction of being someone who was both a usurper, that is, he killed the previous king and seized power, but never even got to see his own son become king, because once he'd reigned for a while, he himself was assassinated. That's like the first thing. That's the way you had to change, let's say, dynasties in the 10 tribes and anywhere else is you assassinate the previous ruler, and then you take power yourself, and maybe your kid gets to do it before he gets assassinated. But Pekah ben Remalyahu was a one and done. No son. He didn't even last a generation. You can't even call it a dynasty. Chazal, we'll talk about this later when we get into Hilchos Shkagos, they called him, basically, he was a bandit. Not a legitimate king. Even less legitimate than others, if you could consider them legitimate. Pekah ben Remalyahu and Retzin, king of Aram. Where's Aram? That's northeast of Eretz Yisrael, centered around Damascus. They're both threatened by the Assyrians. And they said, we want to take over the land of Yehuda, kick Achaz off the throne, and put on the throne who? Someone called Ben Tava'al. Ben Tava'al. Now, interesting enough, that's his name? Well,
some people say yes.
Yeah, some say yes, but Yonason and others say it means the guy that we choose, someone more to our liking. That's what it says. Ben Tava'al means an expression, someone more to our liking. Maybe they didn't have a particular person in mind yet, or maybe they hadn't chose it, maybe they weren't going to tell. But the point is, we don't have any other clue who this Ben Tava'al is. Others say it's Pekah himself.
So Mendel Hirsch says in his Perush on that it's a pun on the other theophoric names that end with El.
Yeah.
So that's Al.
Okay. Fine. Either way, I like Yonason. That's the best. That's the authoritative interpretation.
That's right.
And Radak. Ben Tava'al means we'll put someone else on the throne who could be our puppet. Why? That way we could build an alliance against the growing Assyrian threat. Now, the Navi came and told Achaz, don't worry about that. God will take care of the Arameans and the Israelites, the 10 tribes. By the way, how do you take care of them, their threat? By the Assyrians coming and exiling both of them. And then he said to Achaz, and you know what, I could give you a sign. Ask God for a sign. And Achaz says, what?
I don't want a sign.
Exactly. I don't want a sign. I'm not going to test God. Once again, Achaz is basically atheist.
But
what?
But if he's when he said he didn't want a sign, I thought those people got upset with him because of that.
Yeah, he's basically saying that I don't want to test God. It's sort of like a piety. It reminds me of when politicians put on a yarmulke and go to the hotel to daven. You know, or they use it for photo ops. You know,
what's wrong with not testing that?
Because he doesn't want God involved. Says, I'm not going to. He was given a blank check by God. Ask. Yonason says, ask for anything on earth or everything in heaven.
Not test God out of fear.
Yeah, but the Navi's revealing to us that he didn't want to test God because he didn't care. Okay, Achaz was like that. That he wasn't with God.
So it wasn't out of fear.
Yeah, it wasn't out of fear. It was that he could maybe even made it look like fear, but they generally interpret it, and God should forgive me if I'm getting this wrong. Okay, but it was basically, no, I don't do that. We don't do this God thing. And then we skip a little bit, and when we read off Torah, we get to the part where prophecy, the birth of this wondrous child to the young woman, not to the virgin, to the young woman, and it's basically saying that's Chizkiyahu. Okay. Achaz himself has a young son who's going to get to witness God's redemption, but Achaz himself doesn't get to see it. And what is this telling us about us nowadays? Well, we see the rise of these threats from abroad. We see people trying to create local alliances. Yet, what does God want from us?
Obedience. And that obedience, Shema.
Yeah, but also you could ask for anything. In the previous war, we could have seen, like we said a few times, I said it as it was happening, and I'm surprised. I feel bad. We witnessed something that could have been messianic, and it didn't happen. Am Yisrael could have reclaimed, or finally claimed, all the land promised to the forefathers. Easily. Just chose not to. God says, here, blank check. That this story is recorded because it is timeless. It will repeat itself a few times in history. It's repeating today. The lesson that Yeshua is saying that there's corruption, the legal system, the big shots, they're the ones in control. They're the ones who have to do tshuva. They're the ones who need to be relieved of their positions, replaced by people who have fear of God.
Because of them?
What?
Does that mean we'll be exiled?
Yes. And the danger of all this is that the Third Commonwealth could come to an end if we are continually led in this path. We need to change what's going on big time. And if the people in charge do not actually believe in God, God is more like something that you do where it's a formality. Yeah. Then you're going to have a really big problem.
If that's the case, why tell people to make Aliyah?
I'm not busy telling people to make Aliyah just like that. And what am I going to help them? To say escape anti-Semitism so they could come here full of anti-Semites? They're not going to be able to defend themselves? No, I can't in good conscience. I tell people, you come to Eretz Yisrael in order to keep the mitzvahs. If you want to keep the mitzvahs, so come to Eretz Yisrael. To tell them that it's statistically safer to be a Jew in Eretz Yisrael than it is in, let's say, New York City or California, I don't actually know that.
Probably not right.
It might not be true. I mean, I've had family who was murdered recently, and others who were under attack. That didn't happen in New York. That didn't happen in California. And other people know. We're all touched by this. So we have less of ability to exercise our not God-given right. That's an American expression. Our godly obligation to defend ourselves. You're not supposed to sit by the blood of your brother. That means you have to come to the defense of others. And in some places you can't actually do that. Or they'll make it harder for you to do it. They'll punish you for doing such a thing. The Gemara says that vigilantism, sometimes to defend Jews who are being, let's say, under attack. Let's say one guy, axe murderer, chasing someone else. So you're allowed to do whatever you can to save that person's life. Obviously, you can use lethal force against the intended killer, the pursuer. Not only that, you can, let's say, the Ming vase case we talk about. Pick up someone else's priceless Ming vase in order to bash the guy over the head. Do you have to compensate for the owner of the vase for what you did in order to save the other guy's life?
No.
Absolutely not. Totally exempt from payment.
It's a technical argument. It's not very obvious. It's like, it's should be
no.
To save someone else, you don't need to save yourself. You need to
save yourself. You'd have to pay for the vase afterwards. But if you save someone else, you get off scot-free. Takanas Chazal, in order to save people. That's how Chazal wanted people to step up. Chazal wanted people to step up and defend people.
Melachim, one sees that Goyim are not like that. They are chayav if a guy kills a rodef and he could have gotten away without killing the
Yes, okay, but even Jews have to make a small calculation. You can't just use lethal force if it's clear that you don't need to use lethal force. If there's yes, Jews have different paturim. There's different legal standards, but the point is, it's very hard to make a calculation sometimes. If the guy is shogig, he's also patur. Okay, goyim are shogigim and they're not korov lamezid, they're also patur. Okay, so read the Haftarah. We sit like most situations. We are always looking at two possibilities, extremes. One could be really good, one could be really bad, and the choice is for us. Are we going to keep the Torah or not? And the leader's going to enforce keeping the Torah. It's a real test.